Hey everyone, I need your attention for 1 minute. This is not one of those ads. This is something that has changed my entire life. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that this is all about personal development as the foundation for everything good in your life. And this podcast is now sponsored by Growth Day, which is the world's first all-in-one personal development app. I mean, oh my gosh, can you imagine having everything all in one place that you need to create the life that you want? Now you can. So if you've been struggling with your motivation, your mood, your productivity, or your purpose, you have to check this out. Growth Day helps you consciously change your life and achieve your potential. It has all the self-improvement tools, motivational classes, and life coaching all in one place. So many of us want to improve our lives, but the question is how? Where do we start? What do we use? How do you get unstuck? How do you make self-improvement stick? Well, research shows how. It's when you consistently journal, track your habits, set goals, learn from empowering mentors, and challenge yourself that you'll be happier, healthier, and more successful. But let me ask you something. Where do you actually do all of your personal development work? I have to tell you that over 300,000 people use Growth Day for a reason. It works. It's the world's #1 software for self-improvement. Growth Day has an amazing mindset journal that I absolutely love, a habit tracker, and a goal-setting system. In fact, I bet if you went to my stories this week, you probably saw me using the journaling app and telling you to do it too, because it's the first time that journaling has ever actually stuck consistently in my life because of this app. And best of all, Growth Day has live inspirational classes every single week from the world's top motivational speakers and life coaches. These are people who have impacted my life in huge ways. These are mentors who I already knew and loved. In fact, this is something that's so huge for me, you guys. I personally teach a class in Growth Day every single month, and it is one of the most fun things that I get to do, and I'd love to see you there. These classes will truly shift your life. There's always something new that you will learn. So join me and 300,000 achievers growing our lives with actual real intention. Visit growthday.com/Lori for a free trial. Yes, you can try this for free. So go to growthday.com/Lori and go live your best life. You guys, that's growthday.com/Lori. And I can't wait to see you there.
And that's what leveling up is all about. You're just kind of iterating, getting better every single day, drawing inspiration from everywhere, helping each other. And that's what it is.
Welcome to the Earn Your Happy podcast. I'm Lori Harder, founder of The Bliss Project, 3-time fitness world champion, fitness expert, and cover model turned self-love junkie, lifestyle entrepreneur, and author. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a thought that will help you bust through your fears, connect to your soul, and get focused and clear so you can elevate your life, business, and relationships. We don't wait until we're ready for someone to tell us we're good enough. We take what we want and we anoint ourselves. Get ready to earn, own, and unapologetically rock your happiness every single day. Are you with me? Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. We are doing some really cool stuff with the show lately. We are going to be featuring one of you on the show every single month, where we are going to be coaching you live and recording it and putting it out on the show. So not only will you get featured, your business and your business idea will get featured as well. So what you need to do is rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you want extra credit, you can text the word podcast to 310-496-8363. This is a massive opportunity to get in front of millions of people. And I think that you should really go and do this, because I would love to chat with you. I would love to coach you. You guys, today on my podcast is Eric Siu. He is the CEO of content intelligence software ClickFlow, which helps you grow your traffic while looking like a genius. And who doesn't want to look like a genius? He also owns an ad agency, Single Grain, and he's worked with companies such as Amazon, Airbnb, Salesforce, and Uber to acquire more customers. He hosts 2 podcasts, Marketing School with Neil Patel and Leveling Up. You guys, they're both amazing. And they have a combined 30 million downloads to date. He also frequently speaks around the world on marketing and SaaS. So let's get started. Eric, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. It's so funny. Like before I even hit record, we were chatting and I'm like, okay, I need to hit record because we're already starting to talk about great stuff. So let's do this. So I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Lori.
So, you got kind of thrown into my world. I started reading your story and I'm like, oh my gosh, this human is amazing. I absolutely love the title of your book and your podcast, Leveling Up. I truly feel like that, first of all, I don't know how you got the domain name for any of those things because it's like super kick-ass.
I'll hook you up.
And then it's just, we were talking before this, it truly is, I think, throughout your life, that is what brings us happiness, is like this constant seeking of purpose and leveling up. So first of all, I just want to know what that means to you, because I know it has like some double meaning as in levels of life, but leveling up, where does it even come from for you?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me, Lori. And for me, I think probably when I was 9 or 10 years old, I had 2 directions I was going in. One, I was building out an MP3 website, and the other was I was actually playing a ton of games. So I was never introduced to sports or anything like that. I kind of discovered games on my own. And so I started playing all these games, and I realized that I had started to become pretty good at them. And not only that, I was joining teams, I was becoming part of communities. And these are just a lot of things that I didn't have in real life. Sure, I'd play with my friends and all that. But, I learned that I would get stronger and stronger. A lot of these things, resilience, teamwork and all that, I had learned from games and, the time I spent on it. And I was like, man, I think a lot of these habits can probably apply to real life. I just didn't know at the time. I had told myself at 11 or 12, I'm like, man, if I could just have this type of passion in real life for something, I would be set for the rest of my life and I'd be happy because, I'm just enjoying myself every day. So that's kind of where it started. And then it kind of progressed throughout, my career. But that's the short story.
Okay. I love this because while I was reading parts of your book, I was like, oh, I'm loving this because I love when people draw parallels in their life with business. So, for me, it was, I was kind of the same way. I grew up like not a lot of friends, really restrictive religion. And I found fitness, and that was a sport sort of that I could play on my own, kind of like, gaming. But it was like, I felt like I was a part of this community, especially once, Facebook and everything came out, that I could like tap into this community. But I was finding that these kind of like laws or theories of fitness, once I started becoming an entrepreneur years later, I was like, oh, I get this. Like, I understand that you're going to do the same thing over and over and you're not going to see a result. And one day you're going to be like, oh my God, I did it. Or, you're working through all of these obstacles. There's so many things like that. Time under tension as far as like building muscle. And it's like how much weight is applied is going to make you stronger, and all of these different things with like tearing yourself down. And I see that. That's why I was so excited when I was reading your book. I'm like, this is exactly what he's doing. He's like gamifying life and drawing the parallels from gaming, which is so many different things that we can draw parallels from to apply to business. So, share a little bit more about your story, just so people can kind of have a bit more of your backstory before we dive into that.
Yeah, totally. So, I was the ultimate failure growing up. So, I didn't enjoy going to school. I almost got kicked out of high school just because I didn't feel like going to this one history class my senior year. And then in college, I actually almost got kicked out. My first year, I had 6 withdrawals and I think I had 1 or 2 Fs. My grades had never been that poor before. But I was just, that year, my logic for doing that was I wanted to play World of Warcraft. And other than that, I would go to the casino and play a ton of poker. So I just wanted to play games. Yeah. I just wanted to get better. Poker, because I could compete with people a lot older, a lot more experienced than me. World of Warcraft, I got to compete with some of the best teams in the world. And we'd wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and just do things other people just aren't willing to do, right? So to play at that high level and to enjoy what I'm doing, that was what it was all about. So, during college, I got fired from one job and I got fired from another job when I was about 24, 25 years old. So I was, to my parents, to my friends, I remember one of my friends told me, this is actually just a couple of years ago. He said his group said, Eric, that guy had nothing going for him. And, look at him now, right? So that's exactly what they thought of me. This guy had nothing going for him. So I was very lost until maybe about 23 or 24 years old when I was introduced to this digital marketing thing. And the cool thing about digital marketing, whether you want to call it social, SEO, whatever, it feels like a game. And one of my friends that he comes from private equity, the big investment banks as well. He's like, dude, like what you're doing is you're playing games right now. This feels exactly like how we were like growing up, because he used to play with me. So that's kind of the backstory. But from after the digital marketing thing, I really never looked back because I kept looking for the next thing, right? So first started with SEO, started learning all these other channels. So a year into it, I basically became a VP of marketing for an online education startup. A year after that, I became the number 2 of the ad agency that I now own. And then 6 months into that, I took over the agency. So from about 23 till age 26 or so, it was like a whirlwind. And I think the key thing here is that I found what I liked and I leveled up rapidly, right? So that's one example of it.
Okay, so this leads me to the question, and I know that I had asked you before, like what is exciting you the most right now about this? And it sounds kind of like, honestly, I feel like throughout reading part of your book and what you're saying, like you kind of feel like you find the keys to the universe when you realize like these different things that you were learning and that you're, applying what you're excited about to these other things you're excited about. So I would like to know, what is it that really excites you about this like leveling up that you've kind of discovered and learned about? Like what is most exciting to you right now?
People often talk about creating a vision or a mission, and my mission is to level up the world. And some people might say, well, that's very broad. You never accomplish that. And, my response is exactly, I'll never, ever accomplish that. And that's what a mission's all about. And so for me personally, I just love learning and I love teaching, right? Everything we've been able to build so far, whether it's through the podcast audiences, growing our traffic, email lists, whatever, and, throwing our own events, speaking, whatever, all this, whatever accolades, that's all kind of whatever to me, because like that's part of the journey, but it's all because we started learning first and we started teaching. And so I teach at, USC over here sometimes, in Southern California. I teach at Pepperdine sometimes, and I just love doing that. And so for me personally, I love leveling up every single day. And those that have that mindset, those that want to continue to grow, come along with the journey with me, come along for the journey with me. And, I'm totally open to, I'm just going to continue to do that and enjoy it. It's a game that's never going to end for me. I might have a target that I want to hit in terms of numbers by the time I die. But, I'm just waking up every day trying to get 1% better. And that comes from the late Tony Hsieh.
Okay, I love this. And you talk about, you say, anybody can win at life and business. What makes you think that anybody can win at life and business?
Yeah, I mean, hanging out, you and I were just talking about Clubhouse before we went live, but I'm addicted to Clubhouse right now. And we have a lot of these people that are hanging out in the rooms. One person's the CMO, what was the CMO of Fashion Nova. And then there's all these other big companies, whether they're, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs. A lot of them, they didn't graduate school and they were seen as ultimate failures before. Some people, they grew up in really tough situations. They had single moms, or they didn't have anything going for them. No college, nothing, right? They didn't graduate high school. And so, they didn't let their circumstances define kind of, how the rest of their life is going to look. They continue to figure out a way. They continue to level up and they got to where they are. And I think that's what it is. It's, life is not about, taking a couple of tests, and life doesn't go linearly that way. It kind of goes all over the place. And so you have to kind of go along the way. And the book talks about collecting power-ups along the way, right? Whether it's certain habits or things like that. But you have to continue to get stronger and you have to continue to seek. And if you're able to do that, you'll continue to level up. And I just think there's no way to fail because, I think if these people can do it, if I can do it, I think anybody can do it, right? Because again, I got fired twice, almost got kicked out of school twice. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, I love that. I do think that we all have our own unique gift that we truly just have to find what, kind of like what you said, like where is that place that interests you, and then learn all you can about it and realize that those things can be applied in so many different ways. So you talk about power-ups, kind of like these habits that can be applied? Are there universal habits that you have found? Because you do a podcast, you do, I'm sure, tons of interviews, conversations. You're on Clubhouse having all of these conversations. And what comes through these conversations is you see these kind of like universal truths of successful people. What do you think those are?
Yeah, I mean, I can go on and on, but I would say one of the key ones, and you probably know this just as well as I do, it's persistence. It's not giving up too quickly. I think having a growth mindset, just continuing to seek to improve, to be better. But I also think it's really important, and some people I think fall short of this. It's having a beginner's mindset, meaning that you're never as good as they say you are. You're never as bad as they say you are. You're just constantly operating from that position, right? I think some people, as they become more successful, they develop their ego, which more often than not doesn't help that much. I think one thing that's counterintuitive is stealing, right? I have one chapter on thievery, and it talks about ethically stealing, but that word causes a visceral effect in people, and most people, because you don't want to be known as a stealer or a copier. Most of us like to think that we're original, but if you think about what Steve Jobs says, everything in life is a remix, right? Yeah. And you think about the mouse, they took that from Xerox. They took the GUI, the graphical user interface, they took that from Xerox as well. So a lot of iterations are going on, and I think we're building on the shoulders of giants. And that's what leveling up is all about. You're just kind of iterating, getting better every single day, drawing inspiration from everywhere, helping each other. And that's what it is.
That's so important for people to hear, because truly everything that I've ever done or looked at, I've always just said, like, how can I put my own spin on it? Because if I'm thinking this way, there's got to be other people thinking this way, or how can I make it better? And that's just where everything comes from. And it's funny, I had I still have this girlfriend, but she was like literally, that friend that you have that's just like stuck in their life for 5-7 years, and you can see why they're stuck, but you just have to let them run into walls. And the thing that she was stuck over literally for 7 years was, I have to come up with my original idea. Like, who am I? What is my message? And I was on this train that was just moving forward really fast, because I understood immediately that no message is original. They're just not. We're all getting these, I think it's Plato who has that theory that's there's this cloud that's all these ideas come from, and we're all kind of tapped into this place where all of these ultimate ideas come from. And it's just are you going to be the person who's willing to take that idea all the way through to the end, or put your spin on it? Are you going to be a good steward of that message that you're receiving, and know this is not original? We're all kind of tapped into that. So
that's huge. I mean, it's the whole message part is important, because the message is the story, the unique story that you have, and nobody else can claim that or copy that. And I think a lot of people are too, maybe I remember when I was working on the book, my mom said, "Who are you to write a book?" Right? It's a lot of, and I think that probably comes from within, she probably doesn't think she's good enough.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people tend to think like that, right? And it's a self-defeating thing, but I think it's just important to know that in itself is original.
Okay, so that just brings me to the quick question about, how did you feel when your family maybe wouldn't support you? And of course, I'm sure, we all love our families and all of those things, but usually that's kind of the place where we can really get rocked, sidetracked, thrown off, because we feel like these people know us the best and we should listen to them. So tell me a little bit about that. Were you always supported, and how did you move through that?
Oh, I mean, I love it, right? I think it's probably, I don't know if it's my Asian tiger mom thing, where it's a constant beatdown, right? So even growing up, what would happen was, instead of asking, why are you so interested in games? It was, no, you need to do homework. And they would take away my keyboard. They would take away my mouse. We'd get into these really big fights. So it was a constant struggle. And they would constantly compare me to, those my peers, basically. Look at your cousin, look at these people, blah, blah, blah. Look at them. And, when are you going to get this? Right. So it was constantly feeling like you're not good enough. And so the chip on my shoulder that I have, and I think it's really important for everyone to explore the wiring that they have from their childhood, is I didn't feel like I was acknowledged growing up. So I have a chip on my shoulder, and I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just how I'm wired. So even to this day, I think even when I took over the company at 26 or 27 years old, they're like, who are you to take over the company? You don't have the experience, right? Who are you to write a book, right? And that drives me. And so I've learned to reframe that in my mind, saying, hey, you know what? The psychological pain is actually good. So I don't get beaten down by that. I actually get stronger from it. And so, like, I'm not going to lie, it hurts in the interim, but I quickly reframe it into something else. So that's kind of like a mental jujitsu that you can do. If there's something going on in your head, if you can somehow reframe it into something positive, you can turn it into a strength.
Oh man, I love that you pointed that out. That is literally the story of my life. Like you can tell me anything or give me anything, and I feel like I can take that shit sandwich and turn it into something like amazing.
Yeah, most people can't do that. Most people break from the feedback.
Yeah, and it's it's crazy because there is truly, no matter how traumatic or tragic, there is something that you learn from it. Or even if there's like nothing that you can find, it's always that concept of like, wow, if I can get through this, then there is like nothing that can be thrown at me that I
100%.
won't be able to get through. So there really is always something. So what is it, that you think, as far as maybe bringing other people into your world, or, I know that you talk about teamwork. What is it with, let's talk about collaboration and the power of collaboration. Have you found, because it sounds like you were a bit of a solo person for a while, especially gaming. And, I found myself in kind of a solo world as well. What changed for you as far as when you kind of like connected, collaborated, or brought people into your world?
So at 10 or 11 years old, these MMORPG games, so these are massive worlds, right? Role-playing games started coming out. So those that know World of Warcraft, there was a game before that called EverQuest. And that's where I first started to get a taste of what collaboration really felt like. And so at that age, by the way, being able to like, it was basically me trying to apply for Google at the time, because I was trying to apply for the best team. There was tryouts and all these things.
Wow.
And so I mean, to do the best things, to do the most important things in the game, I had to be a part of the best team. So I had to learn at that age to kind of, build relationships, quote unquote, network. I had to learn how to talk to people. I had to learn how to perform. And all of these actually apply to real life. So I learned that at a pretty early age.
And were some of these people a lot older people? Like, I don't know how that works. Were some people, okay.
So a lot of these people were in college, and a lot of these people were professionals. Some were lawyers. Some people were like rich people that own planes and things like that. Oh my God,
and you were how old?
I was 11.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they took me under their wing, and they didn't mind. They didn't. By the way, what was important to me was they accepted me for who I was. They accepted me based on merit. They didn't judge me based on my age, and they treated me as an equal. And I couldn't find that in real life. And kind of what you're talking about, Lori. I mean, you found your community, and I think that's what all human beings are looking for. Because at the end of the day, looking through this pandemic, we all crave that human connection, which is why you and I have been talking about Clubhouse. So.
Totally. Okay, that is absolutely crazy. I can only imagine what you learned through having to have those conversations. And I think that is one of the biggest pieces kind of about leveling up is you are only going to go to the level in which it is that you're putting yourself like kind of in these rooms or in these games or throwing yourself into these things. So what do you do now, Eric? Because you're like very, very smart. There's probably not a ton of rooms. I know there still are these, quote unquote rooms out in the world with a lot of people smarter than you. But how do you seek out, like, do you seek resistance? How do you put yourself into these spaces where you continue to level up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I mean, one thing I think it is important for people to know, you don't deserve to go to the next level until you've beaten the current one. And so what I do, I think to your point, it's if I'm constantly trying to level up every day, it also means putting myself into uncomfortable situations. So to your point, I mean, when I first took over the company, I ended up joining a group called Entrepreneurs Organization. So, that level is you have to be doing $1 million a year, at least in revenue, right? And then, my goal after that, right immediately after joining I was like, okay, I'm going to join YPO. For YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, it's another kind of peer group of entrepreneurs worldwide. You have to be doing 13 million plus, right? And so, that was, I stayed in EO for a while, and then I joined YPO actually in 2020. And so I'm constantly looking for the next thing. And I know that there's other groups out there. So for me, I'm like, okay, even though I'm part of this level right now, what's the next level? And I'll start asking a lot of people, and they'll naturally tell me, hey, this is the next progression. This is the next progression. And even in Clubhouse, I try to put myself into uncomfortable situations, right? Sometimes I'll be, I'll join rooms where it's, you'll have Asian people complaining about the 9 to 5, and I'll give a contrarian answer. Or sometimes I'll join a room where I'm the only yellow person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be awkward, but it'll be kind of funny. But then like I'll ease into it, right? So I do like to put myself into those positions as long as it's not going to put me in physical harm. So.
Okay. So I think the thing about that for people is obviously they're afraid to do that. So they're like, yeah, that sounds like a really great idea, Eric. But when they go and do it, they don't have kind of I know in order for me to have started doing those things, I almost have to have a plan of how I'm going to support myself around if like shit goes awry, right? Like maybe you put yourself in that situation, you say something and people kind of come at you. Like that's the ultimate fear, right? Like kind of like, okay, what if it's rejected? What if someone calls me out? What if it gets weird? Or what if I don't know the answer? So how do you mentally prepare to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation where things like that could happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that actually reminds me of my poker days in college. So just for context, again, going back to ultimate failure, when I was about 19 or 20 years old, I went into about $25,000 in credit card debt. My credit score dropped to 480. So in the United States, it's based out of 850. So I basically didn't qualify for anything, couldn't get a car loan or a home loan.
Yeah.
And so, what I learned from poker that's really important is that poker teaches you resilience. So you can be playing your A game literally 3 months or 6 months straight, or even 12 months straight, and you can lose, right? Because it's just math. And, poker teaches you a lot about bankroll management, teaches you about, thinking in bets. There's all these dynamics that apply to the world of business, but it teaches you how to take risk, right? And I think poker has basically numbed me into, I have a bigger tolerance for risk than most people. So my take on it is, for me personally, I'm not saying this will work for everyone, is burn the ships, go and do it. And so what if you fail, right? What's the worst case scenario? If you keep working towards leveling up, you're going to make your worst case scenario someone else's best case scenario, right? So let's say, you're someone that goes out there, you're a VP at a job, you're making like 250, 300 grand a year or something like that. You decide to start a business. Let's say you fail in the business in 2 to 3 years, but the beauty of that is all the learnings you got from that business, amazing, right? And your worst case scenario is you can always go back to that high paying job. So your worst case scenario is someone else's best case scenario. And that's another reframe that people can be thinking about, because really at the end of the day, if it's not fatal to you, it's going to be a good lesson.
Hey, let's take a break. I want to tell you about our sponsor, Indeed. If you're growing a business like I am, you know that one of the most important things you can possibly ever do is hire. And I always talk about how important it is to find good people and to find people who are better than you and to hire around your weaknesses. So Indeed.com is the hiring site that helps you find quality candidates with Indeed Instant Match. Indeed searches through millions of resumes in their database to help show you great candidates instantly. You can do the part you really need faster, meeting and hiring great people. Unlike some hiring sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility, delivering a quality shortlist faster. With Indeed, there are no long-term contracts. You can pause your account at any time and you only pay for what you need. With Instant Match, you see a list of great candidates with zero wait. And Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Want your quality shortlist fast? You need Indeed. Right now, our listeners get a free $75 credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/happy. This is Indeed's best offer available anywhere. Get a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/happy. Indeed.com/happy. Offer valid through March 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Real quick, I have to tell you about my husband, Chris, and I's new favorite obsession. You guys, I found it in the grocery store and now I have been ordering it nonstop. Super Coffee is really healthy. It's a delicious alternative to sugary coffee drinks, and it tastes like a freaking frappuccino. It combines the caffeine from 2 cups of coffee with protein and healthy fats to give you hours of focused energy with no jitters or crash. Did you know that Starbucks Frappuccino has 52 grams of sugar and 370 calories? That's like starting your day with a double cheeseburger. You guys, Super Coffee is just as delicious as Frappuccino, but contains listen to this, 0 grams of sugar, 10 grams of protein, and only 80 calories per bottle. It's keto-friendly, lactose-free, and gluten-free. Super Coffee's bestseller is their bottled coffees, but they also make tasty canned espressos, coffee creamers, and ground coffee. You guys, Chris is obsessed with the canned espressos. They're only 35 calories, and they're freaking delicious. When I say they taste good, I mean that they are like my afternoon treat that I think about all day long. I'm obsessed, and they even help curb my cravings. Super Coffee was recently named the fastest growing food and beverage brand in America by Inc. magazine. You guys, I am so obsessed with them that I actually reached out to them because I'm so in love with this product. Super Coffee has a 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you don't love it, you get your money back, no questions asked. We've worked out an exclusive deal for Earn Your Happy listeners that you get to receive 25% off your entire first purchase. I recommend trying one of their best-selling variety packs or bundles. It's a great way to try all the delicious flavors. To claim this deal, go to drinksupercoffee.com/Lori, or you can just use the code Lori at checkout. That's LORI. Super Coffee is also available nationwide in over 25,000 stores like Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, Kroger, and CVS. You guys, trust me, you got to try it. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye. Yeah, it's crazy. You have to be a little bit like, you almost have to be a little crazy. I don't know. I'm just thinking of like right now, I got the vision for this company that I'm starting right now. And I, raising money, I'm raising money from a lot of people that I know, a lot of, people that are in my network, a lot of like high net worth people and friends and people who it's first time investments and things like that. And I have had to go down that road. Like I've had to face that road of like, what happens if this fails and I lose all these people's money? Like, and that would usually paralyze most people. And I've had to just say, well, if I fully share with them what what could possibly happen, that they could lose their investment. And I'm super upfront and I tell them the expectations, but that I'm going to, be the best steward of this money that I possibly can in this business. Then I think it's like you just have to get right with that. Like you have to be okay with that. How do you personally do that when there are like people involved in your life that you have a lot of respect for that you could potentially disappoint? How do you manage thoughts like that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have investors for our software product.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, I think there's like over 100 people on the cap table. And, for us, kind of to your point, Lori, we do keep them up to date. We send them investor updates once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if there's anything to report on with traction, new hires, anything like that, we're just very transparent. And if things aren't going well, we're very transparent as well. We do have a contingency, or it's not a contingency plan, but if the company does fail, knock on wood, what would happen is, we would actually reach out to each and every individual investor and just say, hey, here's exactly what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for believing in us. So maybe you get a next at bat from these people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a large chunk are not going to believe in you for the next one, but you're going to have goodwill built up with a portion of them, right? So I think, honesty is the best policy. And I think I might have missed your overall question. Did I get it or not?
No, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of it is just, how do you deal with it? It sounds like you have kind of like thought of that in your head, but how do you personally, let's say, your company fails, how do you personally like at night when you're going to bed, like kind of deal with the thoughts that can come of the feelings of disappointing people?
I remember, so when I took over my company. So one of the companies is an ad agency called Single Grain. And originally there were 5 partners in the company. They actually hired me on to help save the company. And 6 months into it, the 4 of them decided that they wanted out. And so I was able to basically acquire the company for almost nothing out of pocket. And, a year into it, we had dropped all the way down to 1 employee. I had read this book called Let My People Go Surfing, and I took the title literally. So I just like, oh yeah, let my people go surfing. So not going to come to the office, gonna let them do their thing, autonomy, let them figure it out. And what ended up happening was, people stopped coming into the office. People, the ones that did would come in with like a bag of chips and watch Family Guy. And it was just crazy stuff going on, right?
Uh-huh.
And I remember my outside accounting firm called me and they said, hey, I think it might be time to shut it down. And at the time I got a job offer that would pay pretty well. We're talking about 7 figures and a year. And I said yes. And at the moment I said yes, I was like, holy crap, I can't do this. I can't ever go back to work for someone. And even though there was a ton of pressure at the time, I was like, no, we just have to power through. We just have to keep going. Here's where the resilience comes back in, because everyone else, even my podcast co-host, Neil, he was a partner in the agency. He's like, dude, Eric, there's no brand equity here. There's nothing here. You should get out. And I think sometimes it requires you to be, to your point, it requires you to be crazy. Maybe you see something that other people don't. And if being crazy isn't enough, you actually have to power through it and you actually have to see it through. So I think for me, it as painful as it was, I think I was numb enough to continue dealing with it.
You did something there though. Like you did you took that, you said yes to that job, and then you allowed yourself to kind of envision what that would be like. And you were like, oh, that's not going to work for me. Like sometimes
I'll tell you what, Lori, I mean, the person that referred me to the job, I hot potatoed it back to him. And what I predicted exactly was going to happen, that the company would have to lay off a ton of people and they would basically have to shut down. That's exactly what happened. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. No, but it's literally, so this kind of applies to that, but it's like almost like the takeaway. Like I always play this game with myself, which is funny because you talk about gamifying life, and I truly, truly do. I always do this thing called the takeaway. Like if when I was about to start this company, I'd asked myself, I was like, oh my God, should I do this? I spent like 6 months in this like hardcore, like questioning if this is what I want to do, because it was so opposite of anything I had ever done. And then I say, okay, if somebody came to me and said, you can do anything you want in the world except for this. Like we're taking this totally off the plate. You're never allowed to do it. It's not even in like the realm of possibilities for you. And if I get like a crazy visceral like reaction, I was like, oh my God, what in the hell would I do with my life if not this? And that's always been huge for me, is like do the takeaway, like kind of like gamify it. Like what if these options aren't on the plate? Like what then? Like what now? So for you, what is something that if it was like taken off the plate for you in your life's purpose, you feel like you'd die?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think also, Lori, I think it's important for everyone to know that, Lori, what you just talked about is these are mental models, right? The takeaway, that's a tool for you to use. So if you think about Batman or Batwoman, they have a lot of tools in their tool belt. And I highly recommend, there's Farnham Street. It's all about mental models. These are essentially ways for you to think about things, right? Because a lot of people actually don't spend a lot of time thinking. So an example of that might be, if Lori decides to start this business, what are the second order consequences? Maybe she can't work on her current stuff. And what are the third order consequences there? Maybe, revenue might dip for a little bit, right? Who knows? But I think it's really important to understand that concept, because the Leveling Up book does talk about mental models and power-ups and things like that. But you have to continue to go collect these mental models, and you have to continue to sharpen the sword too. It's not because you learn about it once and that's enough. You have to keep refining. So your original question was, if something was taken over, what would be that one thing, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm just going crazy.
Yep.
I think my ability to teach. So whether it's through podcasting or YouTube or, going to the colleges, because if you said, Eric, what's the one thing you would do if you had no work right now? It would be to continue to learn and teach. So I think that growth mindset, that's probably the most important attribute, at least for me personally.
I love that. So what does it, I so relate to that. Like I definitely have the teacher archetype for sure. I feel like most of what I learn is like, the reason I'm starting this company is because I want to then model and teach women how to create a company like this. So I love that. I fully understand that to my core.
Awesome.
What excites you about teaching? What do you, Eric, personally feel like when you are like in it and teaching? Like, what does that actually feel like in your body and your brain?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Selfishly, it feels like a drug.
Yeah.
So you see people's eyes light up and you know that you've impacted them. And it's like, holy crap, someone got a key takeaway where it's going to affect the rest of them for the rest of their lives. That feels amazing in itself. Sure, the views or the ratings, that stuff is great. But I think being able to look at that and be like, okay, long term, I know this is how this person's going to turn out, right? Because sometimes when I teach at let's say if I teach at USC, there's always one kid in the class that's really curious and is asking great questions. And so, for those, I actually end up building a long-term relationship with. And it's and I continue to keep in touch with them. And even former employees that are very curious, I continue to keep in touch with them because I continue to learn from them and they continue to learn from me. And there's a dopamine hit, I think, when they kind of acknowledge that they've learned something from me. So it's a very part of it is selfish, I would say.
I mean, I think that's kind of the key. I think that's like going where the energy is, right? Like figuring out where your energy is really like high and lifted and where you kind of feel like you're levitating. That's the key to success. Like if you can spend more of your days in that feeling than not, then that is just like in alignment with who you are and why you're here. So,
100%.
okay, if we were like 2 cups of coffee in, 2 glasses of wine in, don't know if you drank it all. But with that said, if we were in that place where we were just deep in discussion, what would be something that we finally get to where you're just like, yes, this is like the good stuff, the good conversation, the stuff of like life. What is that for you?
Yeah, I think it's, I get the most kick when I talk to my other founder buddies about asymmetric bets, right? So asymmetric bets means if you're making a bet on something, you might gain 10 to 100x return, right? And you might lose not that much. So the idea here is there's this book called Dundo Investing. That's DANDHO investing. And the concept here is when you're making these bets, you want to make sure that heads you win, tails you don't lose much or you don't lose at all. So I love talking about this because this doesn't just apply to business, but applies to real life as well. So I'll give you an example of an asymmetric bet from a business perspective. With Single Grain, going back to the ad agency, when I was negotiating the buyout, I basically paid $1 for Neil's shares for 10%, another $1 for another partner's shares 10%, and the rest of the payout would be through the profits of the company, with a contingency of if the company failed, I would owe nothing, right? So for me at that age, I was like, okay, I'm in my 20s. I have a shot here because if I make it work, my upside's going to be unlimited, basically. If it doesn't work, it's going to be an amazing learning experience. I can say that I ran a company and that's going to help me with my career moving forward because, people like to hire executives that have experience running something, right? And so that to me is like, okay, I'm not putting in much. I'm not going to lose much. So I'm going to go all in on this. And so that bet made all the sense, but to everyone around me, it made zero sense, right? So you got to be able to see something that other people aren't seeing. And it's the same thing with, I think asymmetric bets would also be, thinking about where you live as well, right? Something as simple as that, because that has a big impact on the rest of your life too. So.
Oh man. Okay. So yes, we're talking about this. Okay. So with that said, so an asymmetric bet. So yes, you're saying like from, your inner like financial workings and all of those things, like you kind of figure out why it works for you and other people may not see it. But also, and I'm sure the book talks about it, which now I'm going to get this book. Sometimes I'm wondering, do they talk about in this book or with this theory that sometimes like an asymmetric bet, like the upside is something that you can create and through perspective? I'll give you an example, kind of like, okay, so let's say, my husband and I have invested in this company. We put a lot of money in, that if the company doesn't go, yes, we lose all of that money. But the upside for us that we are creating and seeing is that we're going along for the journey. We're learning so much. Like we feel like we're getting a masterclass in investing. We also get to say we're investors and, we have all these different things that now we're invested in all these other companies because of this first kind of like lesson and these upsides that we learned by investing in this company, which still isn't sold, but we feel we've already made our money back because of that.
Yeah, I think that totally counts because not only are you, the payoff can be asymmetric, but the learnings are also asymmetric too, right? So nobody can ever take away that learning from you. And if you think about venture capital, usually what happens is there's going to be 1 or 2 bets in their portfolio that are going to be the big ones, right? The Ubers or, the Amazons of the world, right? Or whatever, Peloton, whatever. Maybe, they'll have 10 to 20 investments that will do, perform like 10x, and the rest of them are going to be failures. And so it's roughly around those numbers. And so venture capital in itself is asymmetric. And I think, I think it's also important to understand that it's okay if more than half of your stuff fails, because this is how most investing is, right? If you think about Berkshire Hathaway, same deal with Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. I remember Charlie Munger saying, if it weren't for these 10 stocks in their portfolio, they'd have a very average return on just kind of across the board. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay, definitely want to get that book. Okay, so when you're thinking of, when you're having these conversations with your friends, what are things that you guys like get excited about looking at, investing in? Where do you see for you a lot of things that excite you out in the world? Like, what are some ideas or concepts?
Yeah, I think the normal entrepreneurial ADD is you want to try everything, you want to do everything,
Yeah.
and you think you're Superwoman or Superman. And the reality is, when you think about, let's use Warren Buffett again or Bill Gates as an example, when they asked the two, what's the most important thing that leads to success? They both wrote one word on a piece of paper and it said focus. So at least for me right now, and when I talk to my friends, we're all talking about buying other businesses. But when we think about buying other businesses, because obviously it's asymmetric, right? It can work out really well. You're buying, assets, you're buying, teams and all that. So, we try to keep it within our area of competence. So for me, I operate in the world of marketing. So marketing software, I invest in other SaaS companies. I'm looking at buying other, potential services business too, that will tie in with my audience. Now, my friend's company, he has a portfolio of pet companies and he just focuses on that. My other friend focuses just on WordPress, right? And my other one focuses on telecoms. But we just try to stay around those because once we start to stray away from it, we're not going to have an advantage. We do have an advantage because whatever I plug in that's related to marketing, I can plug into my audience. Same thing with the other people. So that's the type of stuff that we nerd out on because, I think growing up, we think, okay, we need to get a salary, we need to get a good paying job, and then, they're going to give us a pension. The next level is, okay, we're going to start a business. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You're going to make a lot more. But if you can go out there and acquire other businesses and invest in other businesses, that's actually a lot less work, and you're going to get your time back, and you're going to have situations where they multiply your output, right? So 1 + 1 isn't just 2. It's more like 1 + 1 = like 5 or something like that, right? Because you have so many synergies with all the stuff that you're working on.
Okay, so let's rewind just for people who are like, oh, damn, I'm not even, I'm working on starting my own business or trying to figure that out. What point did you start looking at, wait a minute, there's this world that I could, I've kind of looked at, or I've kind of done my own business, going into, acquiring other businesses. That's like a totally different, level. Totally different animal that you're dealing with. So for you, when did that idea first even kind of like come into your radar, and what did you do to start learning about that?
Yeah, I think I would be a bad example of this because when I was 22 or 23, I actually bought an e-commerce store for with my life savings at the time, which was like $4,000. That failed. And then I tried buying an IT training site. That one failed as well. And then Single Grain, so those two I bought and failed. And Single Grain technically was a mergers and acquisitions thing. I'm air quoting because it's like, it wasn't really, it was just me buying it, quote unquote. But what I would say is I started learning more about it just by having conversations with people. So it does matter who you're hanging around with. And if you're saying you don't have that network, then what I started doing was initially I would go to conferences and I would connect the speakers together and I would host a dinner and I'd pay for it, right? So I become kind of the center of all that. But I digress. So
no, that's a great tip.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you start reading about, you start having these conversations and you start looking at what other people are doing. Who are the biggest companies? What are they doing? And I'm not saying everyone needs to aspire to that. I just want to know what they're doing. And so I read this book called Buy, Then Build. That's a great book. And there's another one called Buying the Small Business. That's from Harvard Business Review. I think if you're interested in that, you could potentially skip the level where you're operating a business and go directly to buying it. I personally wouldn't recommend it, but there are some people that have done it before, right? You would just need to learn how to hire an operator. So there's different, sometimes you can skip to a level, but you just need to understand the different dynamics of what else you need to make happen if you're going to skip a level. Sometimes you can combine levels. And so, the game of life is really different for everyone.
So let's talk about that for a second. Just this idea of, I think when people are first either starting out or even if they've been in business for a while, if they're thinking of a concept, sometimes they think they need to know everything. Like, oh my gosh, I need to be the CEO. I need to know how to do my, supply chain. Or if it's, something more like you do. I have no idea the lingo for what you do, so I'm not even going to try it. But, I'm sure there's a lot in your business that you don't know that you hire teams for, or that maybe even if you're starting something, maybe you find a CEO to run it who actually knows exactly the ins and outs. So can you tell me like an experience of something like that where you really didn't know anything about it and you just kind of built a team around you?
Totally. And I think in your 20s you're learning, and then 30s, 40s you're earning. And I think in my 20s, when I say learn, you're learning how to do things. And I think once the company gets to a certain size, you start to realize, holy crap, like I can't pretend to be the best at everything. In the beginning, you're doing everything. You think you're a superwoman or Superman. But then you realize, at the end of the day, anything great requires a team. SpaceX is not just Elon Musk, it's his team. And so I think it's important to understand not how to do it, but who can do it, right? And so a lot of these things, and I recommend this book called Who, it's with a question mark. His name's Jeff Smart. And, I'm just like, okay, forget it. Like, I'm not good at recruiting, right? I'm not good. Actually, no, that's not true. Let's say I'm not good at finance, right? I don't like doing pivot tables. I don't like dealing with accounting. I just don't like, for me personally, I don't like attention to details. And so I just like moving to the next thing. I like, there's the concept of the visionary and an integrator, right? So I think it's important to understand who you are. Take those personality tests, right? So take a strengths finder. There's a bunch of other stuff that you can take to really understand yourself a little better. I'm not saying they're the end all be all, but from there you build around your weaknesses. And what you ultimately want to be doing is understanding that let's say you're the best at marketing. That's actually a crutch on the company, because the guy that founded EO, Vern Harnish, he has a really good quote that I remember to this day. The founder or the CEO's strength is the company's greatest weakness, right? The ultimate goal of the CEO or the leader is financing. So whether it's raising money or getting more cash from customers, that's one thing. It's recruiting and it's vision, right? Those are the three main things for a quote unquote CEO or a leader. Now, beyond that, your goal, like as you get stronger and stronger, is to be like, forget that. I don't want to be the CEO anymore. I want to be above the company, and I want to be kind of, applying from a chairman or chairwoman level, and just assisting strategically, helping with funds, and then just jumping in here and there, wherever help is needed. So those are kind of the progressions there. You learn first, and then you realize, okay, who can I hire, not how, and then you can progress to eventually becoming the person that sits above the business.
So where in your life are you feeling like you need to move from, the person who's kind of running everything into that position? Do you have anything right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, so for one of the companies, we unfortunately had to fire the CEO. So I'm temporarily sitting in that role for the moment, and before we had a replacement. So that would be the one that's top of mind for me right now.
So is that kind of your theory on everything? Like, you don't want to be like everything you start, you want to move up into the position where you are hiring a CEO.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's I think it's thinking about where are my strengths and where am I best placed. And I'm a very good starter. And I've got a vision. I'm a very good starter, and I'm great at just learning and teaching, right? So I should just be focused on creating content. And naturally, creating content is a lot of leverage. It'll lead to deals, other relationships, things like that. And then learning also helps me with my vision too. And it helps me with kind of, figuring out where we need to go next. So that's where I should be spending the majority of my time. Because if you think about, the Warren Buffetts of the world, he just sits most of the time, right? And Rockefeller back in the day, most people don't know that he just spent most of his time thinking. And that's the most valuable time. Because at least for me, if my calendar's all, it has a bunch of stuff in it, my mind's all jumbled. And so I think the more time I can clear out for myself, the better.
Oh my God. Yes. I'm literally finding that right now. Like, I need to make sure I have this time to think, because you are that person that you're coming up with the ideas, the concepts, the mission, the core value, like you're drawing people to you. And if you don't have that time for these things that really, I think, like create the magnetism, that makes these big ideas or these obsession worthy companies or products, it's like, then you're kind of, you kind of got lost. You turned from this visionary into like this person who's just doing, and the ideas do not flow from that place for sure.
Totally.
What do you do to, like, when do your best ideas come? What are you doing?
Yeah. Great question. So Fridays, I try to block it off. So no meetings at all. And then I do kind of try to batch my time. Mondays are basically all meetings. And I would say for me also, spending the time I actually block out time, during the evenings to think for at least 30 minutes. And, sometimes I might be walking around, and walking is actually great for thinking. So I try to block out as much space as I can. Ideally, I would have a lot more than that. Ideally, I would want a calendar where nothing is booked. But we're not quite there yet. So
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I could talk to you all day. Our time is fleeting. So I want to know what are some things, whether it's about your book or some ideas that you want people to know. Like, what is something that you want to leave people with?
yeah, one concept from the book, and I actually borrowed this from one of the co-founder of ConvertKit, Nathan Barry, and there's this concept of the wealth ladder. And so, the understanding is when we start on the bottom rung of the ladder, we are going to school, right? And then, what happens afterwards is, we're trying to build great habits, right? So school, habits, the next level after that would be getting a job. And then maybe one rung above that might be, starting to freelance on the side. And then maybe that goes well, you start an agency, right? Mm-hmm. Or you can start like a drop shipping business. But the whole idea here is you can continue to level up. You can level up all the way to building products. You can level up to building a social network. You can level up to building a SpaceX. But there's levels to everything. And again, like I mentioned earlier, you have to defeat the current level to get to the next one. And there's no knock on you if you don't want to go to the next level, because most people just don't want to do that. But look, all the levels are there. It's all done by, everything that's been accomplished in the world, it has been accomplished by, other human beings, right? So it's not like you're that far off from other people. And so I think that's really important to understand that. I think to your point earlier, if these people that didn't have anything going for them growing up, myself included, can make something happen and create 7, 8, 9-figure plus businesses, there's no way you can't do the same thing. I think it's important to think about, people don't like to talk about this stuff. They like, when I hang out in Clubhouse, there's a lot of these millionaire rooms, right? How to become a millionaire, how to do this, because they're looking for the shortcut, because they're looking for, they don't even know what to do with that money first, right? I think it's, people don't want to be talking about the long-term stuff, which is the mindset stuff, right?
Yep.
And the more you refine your mindset, the more you refine how you think, and the more you refine how to also think for yourself, the more successful you're going to be. And I think that's just the way it is. And by the way, one quote that sticks well with me is Chamath Palihapitiya. He basically said, look, for better or worse, capital makes you powerful because you can basically impose your worldview on other people. Again, for better or worse, right? Whether it's right or wrong, that's just how our society is. So I think it's really important for people to understand that, hey, it's important to learn how to think, but it's also important to think about how you can kind of build a foundation for yourself where you don't have to be at the beck and whim of someone else.
Mm-hmm. So true. Well, I am so grateful for you coming on this podcast, and I am excited to finish your book. This literally just made me like, okay, how fast can I read this? So tell me about your book. Where can we get it? All of the things.
Yeah, super appreciate it, Lori. So they can go to levelingup.com or they can go to their favorite online retailer. And those are basically the only ways.
Okay, you guys, make sure you go and grab that book. And also, as you guys know, one of the biggest things that you can possibly do for our guests is to tag them on Instagram, upload this podcast, and let them know what your biggest takeaway was. Like, what was your aha moment? Eric, what's your IG handle?
It's Eric OSIU.
So tag Eric on Instagram and upload this podcast and let him know what your breakthrough moment was. Maybe it was a quote, maybe it was something he shared, but it's always so cool to be able to see how he impacted your life. So you guys, until next time, earn your happy. Bye, everyone. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me on the Earn Your Happy podcast. I am so glad that you stopped by. If you could take 1 second to share this episode with someone you think would love it, that would be absolutely amazing, and we would be forever grateful. Also, please leave us a review if you feel so moved by going to iTunes and leaving us an honest thought, an honest comment. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want to hear more of. It would really help us out on our journey to helping thousands and thousands of people. Until then, don't forget to earn your happy. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.
Want to know a huge secret to my success? Okay, not only my success, but just about every single person that I have interviewed on this podcast who is successful has this in common. You guys, they love to journal. They capture their life lessons and what they're grateful for. But a lot of people don't keep this up consistently, and most people do know that the research shows that journaling deepens your gratitude and increases self-awareness. But did you also know that journaling decreases stress and helps you achieve your goals faster? In fact, journaling is a huge differentiator between average performers at work and high-performing people. It leads to longer-term clarity, confidence, and success. So why don't more people journal? Why didn't I journal consistently? Honestly, they don't like staring at a blank page. It's hard to carry a book around with you or a notepad, and they just don't even know what to write about, or they just forget. That's why I know that you're going to love Growth Day. It's the world's #1 system for self-improvement, and it's like all-in-one personal development in an app. And it has an awesome digital journal, and people love it. Growth Day's digital journal has hundreds of research-backed writing prompts for self-reflection, positive mindset, confidence building, and success. I use them all the time, and it makes me think in ways that I typically don't, and it makes me ask myself better questions, which we all know gets better results in our life. It even has prompts that help you develop a daily, weekly, or monthly habit of reflecting on your life and identifying areas to grow. So it's a perfect time of year to start journaling, you guys. When you sign up at Growth Day, you also get systems for habit tracking, goal setting, and scoring, and improving every area of your life. Best of all, I get to teach there too, you guys. I'm so excited. I hope that I get to see you. I teach live in Growth Day every single month with a new topic just for you. So join me there. Start your free trial at growthday.com/Lori. Hey, do you know what the big secret is this year? And it shouldn't be a secret because this should be your biggest focus. It is building your community. I am always working on building and nurturing my community, and everyone is talking about the power of community. Without an online community, you just cannot grow organically or create a real movement, which is what I know that we're all after. And you can build trust or monetize your audience. When you get community right, not only does your audience grow faster, but so do your sales. But where's everybody going to be managing their communities these days? And a lot of online entrepreneurs and thought leaders are turning to Circle.so. Circle is an all-in-one community platform. It lets you host content and create discussions, live streams, group chats, and memberships all under your own brand. And what's so cool about Circle.so is that you don't even need a website or Facebook group. Instead, Circle lets you build your own community site where you can host content and manage your members. You can even create locked and unlocked content spaces, groups, and classes. How freaking cool is that? You can put your content behind a paywall too, and you can charge different amounts of money for different spaces on your community site. Circle.so is famously easy to use, and it has a free 14-day trial for you, so you can go check it out, see if you like it, see if you love all the options. Just go to Circle.so. Go check it out right now, you guys. Imagine being able to manage your community, start group chats and live classes, and accept payments all in one place. Kind of mind-blowing since this is usually spread all over the place. You have to log into so many different things. If this is the year to capture, organize, and monetize your community, head over to Circle.so. You can get a free trial and start building your online community right now. Just go to Circle.so. You guys, you get the 14-day free trial. So just go and see if it's for you. It's going to streamline everything and make your life so much easier. It's so freaking cool. Hey all, I'm so excited to share with you, Earn Your Happy is now part of Growth Day Podcast Network. A bunch of us are coming together to bring more growth to the world and support shows and brands that we truly believe in. And one of my friends is also on the network, and I'd love for you to go subscribe to his show. You guys, Trent Shelton has the most incredible podcast. It's called Straight Up with Trent Shelton, and it's going to remind you that you are built for this. I have heard Trent speak in person multiple times. I've listened to his podcast a ton. He's coming on the show, and I literally cannot wait because this man just spits straight fire. It is like truth that goes to your core and makes you take action right away. If you want one of those podcasts that when you're just out on a walk, you can't help but want to start running and run through a wall in your life, this is the show to go listen to. So you guys, make sure that you go subscribe to the show, Straight Up with Trent Shelton. You're going to love it.